Ram Ram Ram. Sarvebhyah Hritpurvaka Namaskaraha. Welcome to this special session we have today in our Sri Venkateshwara Suprabhatam webinar. And also welcome to our dear Saumya Bhagini who has joined us here. Swagatam Bhagini. We are all indeed very privileged and blessed to have you with us today. And we will begin with Guru Vandanam. Gururev gatirgurumev bhaje Gurunaiva sahasmi namo gurave Na gurof paramam shishurasmi guroho Matirasti gurau mama pahi guru. So before we begin today's session, just a very brief introduction to our dear Saumya Bhagini. She needs no introduction. To all of us in Vyoma, we are all very familiar with her. She has conducted more than 20 courses. So Saumya Bhagini or Dr. Saumya Krishnapur is an expert in Samskrita Vyakaranam. And like I was just mentioning, she has been with us in Vyoma and she's been with the organization since its inception. She has conducted more than 20 courses on various topics, including Laghu Siddhanta Kaumudi, Samasaha, Chandaha, Inganta Prakriya, and many others. And she has also been instrumental in coming up with many multimedia tools for learning Sanskritam. So some of them are available on digitalsanskritguru.com. And Dr. Saumya Krishnapur has been involved in teaching Sanskritam for more than 2 decades at various levels. She holds a PhD in Sanskritam. She has completed her Acharya MA in Samskrita Vyakaranam. And she also holds an MSc in biochemistry. She is the recipient of many prestigious awards, including the gold medal from Rashtriya Samskrita Sansthan, New Delhi, for securing the highest marks in Vyakarana Shastra in Acharya examination across all campuses. And she's also the recipient of Sri Bharati Tirtha Gold Medal from Rashtriya Sanskrit Sansthan for securing the highest marks in Acharya examination. She has presented papers in many prestigious conferences and has widely published in many journals of international repute. Well, to list all her awards, her publications, and her achievements would actually take up our entire session today. But I'm very grateful that despite her very busy schedule and many commitments, including teaching commitments, she very kindly agreed to be with us when we requested her to address us on some of these Vyakaranam aspects and certain other nuances of pronunciation, which would be beneficial for all of us. I've received all your questions and will be asking her to address each of them. Please note that most of these concepts which Dr. Saumya is going to deal with today, they require an entire webinar by itself because they also require an in-depth knowledge of Sanskritam grammar. And to be able to put it succinctly for all of us is a Herculean task by itself. But with Saumya Bhagini's guidance, we will be able to appreciate all these aspects better. But what I mean to say is we will not be able to go into each concept very much in detail. So those who are interested to know more about these concepts could please study Sanskritam and take up the courses offered by Saumya Bhagini. Many of these concepts she has dealt with in her webinar sessions in detail. In case of any doubts, request you to please type them out in the chat window. We may not have time to unmute each of you and take questions. It is very time consuming. So please type them out in the chat window and we will try to address as many questions as possible towards the end of the webinar. Whatever questions have been emailed, those have been shared. And like I mentioned, we will be addressing each of those. Welcome, Saumya Bhagini. Saumya Bhagini, I think you will be able to share the...
Yes. Ram Vrinda Bhagini. And thank you very much for the very kind introduction, and also for the opportunity to be present in one of your courses. Definitely yours is one of the most popular courses on Vyoma right now. And we are really very, very happy that we are inspiring so many people to learn. There was Bhagavad Gita, Raghuvira Gadyam, and now Venkateshwara Suprabhatam. So it's been extremely good for Vyoma overall, all your courses. So as you said very rightly, many of the questions are those which require an in-depth explanation if you want to go into great detail. But I'll try my best to cover to whatever level is possible in this time, and keeping in mind that the audience is a pretty general audience who may not have much introduction into Vyakarana Shastra as such. So thank you, we can start.
Dhanyavada Bhagini. So the first question, and I've received many queries regarding this, pertains to Chandas. So what are the kinds of Chandas we come across in Suprabhatam?
Okay. Let me share my screen. I have a very, because you shared some of the questions in advance, I have tried to do a few bare minimum slides. They are not very explanative as such, but I thought maybe something is better than, just me talking. Just a moment. Can you see my screen?
Yes, Bhagini, we can see your screen.
Okay. So what is a chandas or a meter is the first question. So maybe all of you know, but since I don't know the background of many of the students, I'll try to cover very basically. So when we talk about chandas or meter, whenever we have a shloka or verses in Samskrita, there is a definite pattern or arrangement of the syllables in each line. So the usual structure we have, as you all know, is that there are 4 lines, what we call pada. Pada is a quarter. So each verse is divided into 4 lines. Even when we write it in 2 lines, say Kausalya Supraja Rama is 1. Then Purva Sandhya Pravartate, Uttishta Narashardula, Kartavyan Daivamanhikam. So there are 4 lines. And the interesting thing is, most commonly, all 4 lines will have the same number of syllables and they are arranged in the same pattern. Okay. So there are, of course, rare cases where there are uneven meters, but what we see, definitely what we see in the Suprabhatam, in the Gita, etc., all these are what we call the Samavrittas. That is, all 4 lines have the same number of syllables and they are arranged in the same pattern. So what do I mean by a pattern is, there is a binary system which is followed in the Chandas. We call it Laghu and Guru. So it's a very interesting mathematical concept also. There are great mathematicians like Manjul Bhargav who have gone into the mathematics of the Chandas Shastra. It's a very interesting study in that aspect also. But in general, there are only 2 kinds of syllables. Any syllable we take can either be a laghu or can be a guru. So a laghu is literally a light syllable, short vowels. So we know hrasva and dirgha. So a short vowel is called laghu in general, and long vowel is called guru or heavy. But in addition, if a short vowel is followed by what comes next also affects this short vowels. So if it is followed by a sanyukta akshara, which is a conjunct consonant, combination of consonants, or anuswara or visarga, etc. So the short vowel also becomes what we call the guru. So a chandas is nothing but an arrangement of this laghu guru in a particular order. Say the most common meter in the Suprabhatam part of it. So where we have, say, Sri Venkatesha Charanam Sharanam Prapadde, or Shri Venkata Sheshadri Shekhara Vibho Tava Suprabhatam, all those. So this is the pattern. You don't have to remember, but I'm just showing. She is long, so it is a guru. Sha is long, so it is guru. Dri is a short vowel, so it is called a laghu. Again, she is long, so we call it guru. Kha, ra, vi, all are short. So laghus, Sheshadri, Shekhara, Vibho. Bho is long, so a guru. Tava, tava or short, laghus. Then su. Su is actually a short vowel, but following that su, we have the pra. Pra is a sanyukta akshara, a conjunct. Therefore, that has an effect on this su. So, suprabhatam. So, when we say that su, it is called a guru. Then pra itself is short, so laghu. Bha is guru, and tam, there is ta but followed by extra consonant m, so that tam, that syllable, is again a guru. So this is how we do a pattern. Whenever you take any verse, it is possible to just quickly mark the laghu guru of it. Then there are further things. Actually, in each of these are marked into groups of 3, and they are identified by names called ganas and so on. But we don't need to get into those details. So that what we need to be aware when we are chanting is that there is laghu and there is guru. And if you don't chant them correctly, the pattern is disturbed. The main thing of chandas is, because this pattern is there and because it is fixed for each line, it gives a definite rhythm to the shloka. If we don't pronounce any one letter correctly, it affects that rhythm and it doesn't fit into the raga. Okay, so that is the main thing we need to remember with pronunciation. So we have to be careful that we are pronouncing each letter correctly so that it fits the meter. So coming to, you asked about the chandas. What are the various kinds of meters used in the Suprabhatam? So one of the most common ones is the Anushtup or the Shloka. So in the first 2 verses of Suprabhatam, Kausalya Supraja Rama and Uttishthotishta Govinda. Then again in the Stotram, we have the last verse. Ajnanina Maya Doshan Asheshan Vihitan Hare. Then the whole of the Mangalashasanam. Okay. So all those are in what we call the Anushtup, where there are 8 syllables per quarter. It is a total of 32 syllables in the whole set. Okay. Then you have the 4th verse in Suprabhatam. Okay, so that is a very special meter. That is actually only the one rather rare chandas that we find in Suprabhatam, called Manjubhashini. Okay, Tava Suprabhatam Ravindalochane. That verse, Bhavatu Prasanna Mukha Chandra Mandale. So there are 13 syllables per quarter. So a total of 52. That arrangement, whatever you find, it is the same in all 4 quarters. Okay. Other than that, all other verses of the Suprabhatam. So other than these, so all of them are in a very popular meter called Vasanta Tilaka. Okay. So if anybody are familiar with the chandas, we have lakshanas of chandas. So we say Ukta Vasanta Tilaka Tabhaja Jagaugaha. If you don't know, don't worry. It doesn't really matter. But if you know, Vasanta Tilaka is a very popular meter of 14 syllables per quarter. So there are a total of 56 syllables. So to actually understand the pattern, what this means is, if you get the raga for one of these verses, all the other verses you can recite in the same one. Like the same pattern will follow for all these verses, because even though the syllables, the actual letters are changing, the rhythm behind them, the pattern of that Laghu Guru remains the same. Whether you're saying Sheshadrishekhara Vibho Tava Suprabhatam, Shri Venkatachalapate Tava Suprabhatam, and so on. All the lines, they are arranged in the same pattern. That is what makes it very easy. One thing is to chant. The second thing, it also helps in sort of self-correction, you know. I mean, when I am chanting, say, even if it is a new verse, if I don't tell some syllable correctly, it immediately wakes me up. Okay, this is not fitting into the pattern. So something is wrong. I am reading something wrong. So if you get that pattern correctly, you will be able to fine tune your pronunciation to a particular way. So next, if we go to the sorry, I think there is a Stotram is next. So in the Stotram, the first 8 verses are in a meter called Totakam. So Totaka is a very, very nice, it's a jumpy kind of a rhythm. I'm sure you would have, you have finished Stotram, right? So Avanitanaya Kamaniyakaram Rajani Mukhamburuham Rajanicharajatamomihram Mahaniyamaham Raghuramamaye. Right, so it's a very, very, very symmetrical chandas. It was actually, there is a story that it was invented. This meter was invented by Totakacharya, who was one of the disciples of Adi Shankaracharya. So there's a story when Shankaracharya, he comes to Shankaracharya and he sings the praise of the Guru in that Vidita Khila Shastra Sudha Jaladhe. It's a very Totakashtakam. It is called Totakashtakam. And the name of the chandas is also taken from the Acharya's name. It's a very simple chandas. I mean, even when you are singing, you can say la 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 la. There are 4 triplets. Each of them is Laghu Laghu Guru, Laghu Laghu Guru, Laghu Laghu Guru. That is all. So it's a very simple one. There are 12 syllables per pada and a total of 48. It's the same repeating pattern. Then the 9th and 10th verses in Stotram, they are also 12 syllables, but the chandas is called Bhujanga Prayatam. Again, Bhujanga Prayatam was one of the most favorite meters of Adi Shankaracharya. He has composed so many Bhujangams. Sharada Bhujangam, Subramanya Bhujangam, Sri Rama Bhujangam, Vishnu Bhujangam, and so on. So all those are in this meter called Bhujanga Prayatam, which also has 12. The difference is in Totakam, it is Laghu Laghu Guru, whereas in Bhujanga Prayatam, it is Laghu Guru Guru. 2 syllables are Guru. Which are these 2? Sorry, I forgot which is the 9th one in Stotram. Do you remember, Brande? Those 9th and 10th.
And 10th verses, Bhagini.
Yeah, in Stotram.
Yeah, Vina Venkatesham and Aham Duratas.
So Vina Venkatesham Nanatho Nanatha. So it is Laghu Guru Guru, Laghu Guru Guru. A repeating triplet of Laghu Guru Guru is Bhujanga Prayatam. Okay. So then when we go to Prapatti, so Prapatti again 2 to 16, they are all in Vasanta Tilika, the same as what we have in Suprabhatam. Only the first verse of Prapatti, the Ishanan Jagatosya Venkatapatehe. So that is in a longer meter called Shardula Vikriditam. So Shardula, it's like a gate of a tiger. That is what it means, the name. But basically it has 19 syllables per quarter. And in all these long meters, there is an option to pause in between. Usually the verse itself is arranged in such a way that you can pause at a point. So in this verse, a pause is allowed after 12. I'm sure Brinda Bhagini must have thought it when she taught the verse. So Ishanan Jagatosya Venkatapatehe. You can pause there. and Vishnu param preyasim tadvakshasthala nityavasa rasikam. So a pause and then takshanti samvardhinim and so on. Okay, so that is a very brief one. So in Chandas, again, for every meter we learn what is the Gana pattern and there is a Lakshana and so on. So if you're interested, you can go through there is a course called Chandas. Okay, in one in which all these except that Manju Bhashini, all the other meters are dealt with. So you can go through. So if you have any other specific questions about Chandas, you can let me know, Bhagini.
One question which someone has asked, Bhagini, when the pattern of syllables are disturbed and pronunciation changes, does the meaning also change?
See, it depends on why that pattern is getting disturbed. So obviously, if we are pronouncing, say, a guru as a laghu or a laghu as a guru, then the word itself is lost. So it is possible that the meaning will change or it may become meaningless because, I mean, not because the pattern itself was changed, because in the background we are changing the word. So there is a saying in the Mahabhashyam, they say, Shabdohinaha svarataha varnataha va mithya prayuktaha natamarthamaha. So even if a single syllable or a single swara in the Vedic Ucharana, swara changes, mithya prayuktaha na tam artham aha, it will no longer convey the meaning which was intended. So it is possible. So I'm saying not that if the tune matters or if you are not able to hold the tune, it is not that the meaning will change. But if it is because the letters themselves are altered, then yes, it is possible that the meaning will change.
Thank you very much, Saumya Bhagini. I think there is some question pertaining to Anushtup Chandas. That Anushtup does not follow the same pattern. I don't know what that means, but
Yes. So it is correct, as in, see, all these other meters are like individual meters, whereas Anushtup is actually not a individual meter by itself. It is actually a class of meters. That is, any verses which have like 8 syllables per pada are called Anushtup, and they are like over 250 different meters which belong to that Anushtup Chandas. I mean, that is the number of permutations and combinations that we have. So Anushtup in general is a generic term. We identify that within that there are specific ones, but again, the common one has a specific structure. So I think time will not allow me to go into detail into Anushtup, but it is dealt with, as I said, in that course, or they can reach out to me separately for that.
thank you, Saumya Bhagini. Just one more question, I think, regarding Chandas.
Sure.
And then, what is the meaning of Bhujangam?
Bhujangam is a snake. So it's like a curve. If you actually look at it, it looks like it goes, say, Laghu, Guru, Guru, it goes, then it comes back to Laghu, then goes to Guru, Guru. So it's like that curved movement of the snake. That is why it is called Bhujanga Prayata. Prayata is the movement. So Bhujanga Prayatan means the movement of a snake.
Dhanyavadaha, Saumya Bhagini, and also for sharing the very interesting episodes pertaining to Totakam. It was really very enlightening for all of us. And like Bhagini said, please sign up for the Chandas course, which has been offered by her. Of course, some basic knowledge of Sanskritam would be required, and you would be able to appreciate the Chandas better. Now, I've received many emails regarding this question, moving to the next one, and many of them in chat also are asking me this question about Dvitvam, Bhagini. So if you could explain conceptually and how we use it in our chanting. I think this is the most popular question by far in all chanting courses.
I'll try to do it, but again, I just want to make this as a small disclaimer. So see, it is a grammar topic. So it's not like very easy to put it in terms which are, I don't want to unnecessarily complicate it, but still I will tell you what it is. So Dvitvam, there are different kinds of Dvitvam. Dvitvam literally means doubling, right? Dvi is two and Dvitva is doubling. So we see doubling in many cases. Say for those who are familiar with a bit of Samskrita, we see dhatu dvitva. Say in Litlakara, we have papatha, vavande, etc. So that the dhatu, the beginning part of the dhatu, dadati, is doubled. Then we have doubling of the entire words in the language. Say punah punaha, pade pade, nanatho nanathaha. So in so Prabhatam itself we see that. So nanatho nanathaha, prayacha prayacha, prasida prasida. So when you are putting emphasis or when you want it repetitively, the whole word is doubled. Then there is also the doubling of consonants or varna dvitva. So that is what we are talking about when we when we mean dvitva in the context of this uchcharanam, right? So what is this doubling conceptually? There are sutras for it. So in Paniniya Vyakarana, there are sutras which tell us when this doubling happens. So I'll give you the theory first, and then I'll let you know what it really means for pronunciation of shlokas. So the idea is any consonant other than repha and hakara is doubled. Okay, so that is the standard rule. Repha and hakara in Samskrita, they are never doubled. Okay, so they don't get dvitva. So any consonant other than repha or hakara will get dvitva when they are preceded by a swara, a vowel, and when they are followed by a no vowel, when there is no vowel following. That is the rule according to the sutra. So anachicha is the sutra. If I mean, I know many of my students, that is students from my Laghu Kaumudi class, are also attending this. So for them, we have covered that in the Laghu Kaumudi class. The sutra is called anachicha. So it means that any consonant can be doubled. So when there is a vowel preceding and there is a no vowel following. So what does this mean? No vowel means it can be a consonant or it can be nothing. Okay, I'll just show a couple of examples. When you have a simple word like Kausalya. Okay, so you have Kausalya, you have the a here. In Sakara, you have the a, l, and y. So there is a swara and there is a lakara followed by y, which is not a vowel. So therefore, this l is doubled and you get Kausalya. So there is a difference. It's a very subtle difference, but to saying Kausalya, I can say Kausalya, but it doesn't sound right, right? Kausalya, we say Salya, even though it may not be specifically called out, there is a doubling of that lakara. So Kausalya, not Kausalya. Okay. You can say that, but that when you say that as Kausalya, there is the doubling of lakara. Again in Supraja. So Su, you have the U, then P and R. So there is a vowel, consonant, and another consonant. Basically two consonants together. So the first of that consonant is doubled. Supraja, not Supraja. So Supraja, Supraja. But when you are saying it together, Supraja. Also, Varnin, we have this in Meena Krite Kamathakola Nrisimha Varnin. When you say that as Varnin, so there is the Ikara, then there is a Nakara, and there is nothing following, right? So it is not a consonant following, but there is nothing. There is a pause when there is nothing. So a consonant at the end of the pada. So there also it can get doubled. As long as there is no vowel immediately following, it can get doubled. So it can become Varnin. That is the idea in Dvitva. So what effectively happens? What do we mean by any consonant plus no vowel is that the first letter of a Sanyukta Akshara. A consonant plus consonant means a Sanyuktakshara. So the first letter of a Sanyuktakshara, if it is not Repa or Hakara, it can be doubled anywhere. It is a general blanket rule for Dvitva. Of course, at the end of the pada, as I said, if there is one consonant, if there is nothing following, then also it can get doubled. There is one more rule for Dvitva, for Repa and Hakara. So as I said, Repa and Hakara, they don't get doubled. So if we have the same case where there is a vowel and Repa or Hakara, then what happens is the consonant which comes after that Repa or Hakara. So if Ra or Ha is followed by another consonant, that consonant will be doubled instead of Repa or Hakara. So Purva. So when you are saying Purva Sandhya Pravartate, so Purva, Purva. So there is a doubling of the Vakara. So U, R, V. So there is Repa. So the consonant after the Repa is doubled to give Purva. Again, Pravartate. So Pravartate. So the Takara can be doubled. And again, Annikam. We will come to this later, hopefully, if we have time. But there also there is Hakara and the Nakara, Annikam. So when you're saying the Nakara is doubled there. So this is about Dvitva from a Vyakarana point of view. There are two sutras called Anachicha and Achorahabhyam Dve. So Raha, the consonant which follows them is doubled. In all other cases, the first consonant. Basically, in this combination with Repa and Hakara, the second consonant is doubled. And in all other conjunct consonants, the first consonant is doubled. That is what Vyakarana says. And Dvitva is optional. Okay. So technically, all Dvitva is given as an option. Theoretically, it's like you can either say use the Dvitva or not use the Dvitva according to grammar. But when we are chanting shlokas, doing Dvitva is a best practice. That is, if you do not do Dvitva, especially during verses, what happens is, we already talked about the Chandas. For Chandas, we need that Laghu Guru combination that will be affected if you don't do the Dvitva. So I already mentioned a Hrasva Swara, when it is followed by a Sanyuktakshara, it becomes a Guru. It is not enough if I just say that this Hrasva is a Guru. When pronouncing, I have to give enough emphasis or enough time. The idea is a Laghu syllable takes lesser time, say 1 matra, whereas a Guru syllable takes 2 matras. To ensure that the pronunciation goes for 2 matras, you need the doubled letter. If you don't have the double letter, it doesn't appear like a Guru. So since it doesn't appear like a Guru, it will affect the rhythm. So that is why when even when we are teaching, when Brinda Bhagini specifically says this, there has to be Dvitva here. What it means is, at that place, if you don't do the Dvitva, it will not fit into that pattern by being a Guru letter. So it is most commonly when there is a Hrasva. I'll show you one example. So Panchananabja Bhava Shanmukha Vasavadyaha Traivikramadi Charitam Vibudhastuvanti. So you have two such contexts here. Say you have Panchananabja. Okay, so there is a na is a vowel, there is a ba. So you can do Dvitva here. But even if you don't do Dvitva specifically here, what happens is na is already dirgha. It is a Guru. So that effect of Dvitva is not very much felt when you are pronouncing. You can say Panchananabja without any stress, Panchananabja with stress on the bakara, which means when I say stress, I mean the Dvitva. So in both cases, the pattern is not affected much because it is a Dirgha Swara. But when it is a Hrasva, if I say Trai Vikramadi Charitam, when I say Vikra without the doubling, this V doesn't become a Guru. According to this pattern, you see Pancha, the second letter has to be a Guru. Whereas if I don't do the Dvitva here, if I don't say with Dvitva, if I say Trai Vikra, it appears as a Laghu, which does not fit into the pattern of the Chandas. So Trai Vikramadi Charitam, you have to give that Dvitva there so that this Vikra, then it appears as a Guru. So coming back, the thing is, Dvitva is technically optional for grammar, but for Chandas, especially when there is a Hrasva Swara followed by a Sanyuktakshara, that Dvitva has to be there so that that Laghu Guru pattern is maintained. So in chanting of verses especially, Dvitva is a best practice which is recommended to be followed. Otherwise, the chanting will not appear even and it will not give the fit into the pattern of Chandas. Okay. Anything here, Vrinda, for questions?
I think most of the questions you have already answered, Bhagini. Does Dvitvam have effect on Chandas calculation?
Yes, exactly. As I said, I
Hmm.
mean, when we are doing an actual calculation, what I do is, say, if I am marking Laghu Guru, what I'll do is I'll say this is a Guru. Then looking at the Sanyuktakshara, I will automatically say that this is a Guru. But when I am chanting it to make it a Guru, I have to do the Dvitva. Otherwise, it will not become a Guru and it will not fit into the pattern.
Another question also, Bhagini, you have already answered it. So is Dvitvam only for chanting?
No, I mean, it's for pronunciation. Anytime you are pronouncing, you can use it.
Huh. Okay. I think another question is, may I know why Dvitvam is invisible? Why can't we add Dvitvam letter explicitly to make it more clear?
You can add it. So we are, I mean, they keep asking this even for, just a second. How do I, Parasavarna and all that. See, it makes reading so much more difficult. So I just wanted to show you, say, if I actually put Dvitva and Parasavarna and wrote the shloka, even a verse like Shuklam Baradharam Vishnum, I am sure most people would find it very difficult to read. Right. I mean, this is how I would write it. It just looks like a mass of letters where you are unable to read it. And even if you know the words, you will not be able to understand. Actually, if you know the manuscripts, the older manuscripts, they were written like this. That is, there are no spaces. Mostly Parasavarna is done. And Dvitva is also done. Not in all cases, but in many cases, Dvitva is also done. Okay. The thing is, they're so very difficult to read. You don't know where is the word break. Sometimes you are unable to decide what are the words. You don't know the meaning. There is a lot of difference. That is why a modern printing conventions, what they do is they put a space. They don't put the Parasavarna because when you write it separately, it is easier to read the word and understand. They also will not put Dvitva. And it is not needed also. It is it's like a child when it is writing ABC, it may feel it's very difficult to write. Initially even drawing that curve for A and all becomes difficult, but with practice it becomes instinctive. You don't even have to think when you write. It is the same with pronunciation. Even all our chanting or this is based on Shruti Parampara. You listen to good listening and you repeat, then you will get it automatically. I mean, when Brinda Bhagini is thinking, or when you're thinking, we don't have to think of, okay, I am doing Dvitva here or doing Parasavarna here. It will flow automatically. Okay, but it will need practice, of course. Initially, you have to listen carefully and try to repeat exactly as she is repeating. That is the problem. We shouldn't read from a script. Actually, even now, I mean, I don't know if you know, in music, in many cases, music teachers also will not allow you to read from a script or a swara, right? They'll ask you to listen and sing. The script is there just for a reference, but you shouldn't be chanting or singing with reference to the script. It is like a guide, but the actual nuances of singing or pronunciation come from that shruti, from listening. So if you listen well and if you repeat correctly, you will get it without it having to be spelled out, which will probably make it more complicated rather than easy.
Thank you so much, Soumya Bhagini, for putting this very complicated Vyakaranam concept so lucidly and so succinctly for us. And though there are other questions, I realize it's already 6:30, so almost. So I think I will move to the next one. And some of them have also asked that question about Parasavarna and Purva Rupa Avagraha Chinha. So coming to the specific question, Sandhi between words in a shloka, is it mandatory or is it optional? And depending on the time, of course, if you could just briefly tell us about Parasavarna and the Avagraha Chinha, that would be great, Bhagini. Thank you very much.
Okay. See, again, there is a difference between what I call optional in a normal language and when we are chanting, right? Yes, if it is sandhi between separate words, technically we say samhita is optional and therefore sandhi can be optional, but all those may not hold good for chanting of shlokas, because here we also have the chandas to consider. And again, as I said, that flow also to consider, right? So between this pause and this sandhi split, so the golden, there is only one golden rule. If you pause, you have to split the sandhi. If you don't pause, you cannot split. That is the rule for chanting. When we are chanting the shlokas, so if there is a pause at that, you can split the sandhi. When I'm talking about the general sandhis, it can be visarga sandhi, it can be a swara sandhi or a general sandhi. So where there is a pause, sandhi split has to be done. If you don't pause, you cannot split. And where can you pause? There are specific rules for ucharana of verses, because you cannot pause at any point. So where is a pause allowed? Usually at the end of the pada. So there are 4 padas. Usually at the end of the pada, there is a pause allowed, unless it is a samasta pada, which is continuing to the next pada. So if it is a long one, then you cannot pause. Otherwise, you can pause at the end of the pada. And as I said, longer meters, we saw in Shardula Vikriditam. After the 12th, you have the pause point. So you can, if you are pausing there, Ishanan Jagatosya Venkatapatehe, you have to split, pause, and then Vishnoh Param Preyasim. If you are not splitting, if you are not pausing there, you can tell the whole verse in one line. Ishanan Jagatosya Venkatapater Vishnoh Param Preyasim. You have to give it as Pater Vishnoho. You cannot put a visarga there unless you have a pause. So if you have a pause, you have to split. If you don't pause, you cannot split. That is all. And you cannot pause anywhere and everywhere for a verse. Okay. So, and you cannot simply split the sandhi also, even though I say, okay, sandhi is optional, etc. I cannot say Gayati Ananta Charitam Tava Naradaha Api. It will not come into the meter at all. I have to do the sandhi Gayatyananta Charitam Tava Naradopi. Then only it will come into chandas. So you cannot, even though grammatically a split between sandhi is optional, keeping in mind that this is a shloka and a shloka is fit into a meter, you cannot split sandhis randomly. Only at pause points, and at pause points you have to split. You cannot another very common one, everybody has this one I took from the Gita. This verse everybody should be familiar. See, yatra yogeshwara krishnaha, यत्र पार्थो धनुर्धरः तत्र श्रीर्विजयो bhutihi ध्रुवानीतिर्मतिर्मम. So I am pausing at the end of each pada. There I have split, but you cannot split as tatra shrihi vijayo bhutihi. That is not done. So similarly, in other cases, yatra parthaha dhanurdharaha, in chanting we cannot do it, even though it is correct. But in chanting you can only split at the end of the pada. If you are pausing, if you are not pausing, even in actually the Gita assessment last week, I saw that there were some participants who were telling the whole line together, but they were splitting at Yatra Yogeshwara Krishnaha Yatra Partho Dhanurdharaha without that pause, which is not correct. If you are giving the whole line together, Yatra Yogeshwara Krishno Yatra Partho Dhanurdharaha, this has to be Krishno. When you are not pausing, you cannot say Yatra Yogeshwara Krishno Yatra Partho Dhanurdharaha. That is wrong. You cannot have this O unless there is a Mridu Vyanjana coming. That is the Sandhi rule also. So if there is a pause, you split. If you are not pausing, you have to do the Sandhi. Similarly here, Tatra Shrir Vijayo Bhutir Dhruvani Tirmatir Mama. You have to tell the whole thing together, do Sandhi everywhere. If you split at the pada, then you can split the Sandhi. You can also do this. Yatra Yogeshwara Krishno, Yatra Partho Dhanurdharas, Tatra Shri Vijayo Bhutir Dhruvani Tirmatir Mama. So in very fast, when you are doing like practice or doing Parayanam, you can also do this. So the only determining factor where you are splitting Sandhi is where you are pausing. And that pause is not always up to your choice. So it is determined by the chandas. So that is in general for most sandhis, including the Visarga Sandhi. About the Parasavarna Sandhi. So Parasavarna Sandhi, it means nothing. It's basically there is Anuswara, which gets the fifth letter of the Varga. When an Anuswara is followed by a Vargiya Vyanjana. I hope everybody knows enough Samskrita to know Vargiya and Avargiya. So the five Kavarga, Chavarga, etc. So if it is a Vargiya Vyanjana, it gets transformed into the fifth letter, Prasanna Vadanam Dhyayet, etc. If it is Ya, Va, La also, it takes that nasal form of Ya, Va, La. Shuklam Baradharam Vishnum, Va as the nasal. Okay. Again, Parasavarna is optional according to grammar, and it does not have an effect on the Sandhi. Okay. So, I mean, sorry, on the Chandas. Unlike these Sandhis where the syllable is changing and therefore it affects the Chandas, doing Parasavarna or retaining Anuswara will not affect the Chandas. It will not affect the meter also. Therefore, it is possible, actually many people, they chant without the Parasavarna, the Anuswara. Recommended again as a best practice, if you look at the Vaidika Ucharanam, they always do Parasavarna. Okay, so for us the gold standard for Ucharana is the Veda Patha, and they always do Parasavarna. They don't chant with Anuswara. Even all these verses, when all scholars or Vidwans or our gurus are chanting, they always chant with the Parasavarna. So it is again a recommended, but unlike these, so all this, whatever we talked so far, say Dvitva or this Visarga Sandhi split, because of the Chandas restrictions, they will have to be done. You don't have an option. Anuswara Parasavarna, it is, I mean, it is possible to do it without affecting the other parameters. But again, as a recommended best practice, it is good if you can practice it. The chanting sounds nicer. It is easier also rather than the Anuswara.
Thank you very much again, Soumya Bhagini. The example was wonderful. And now I must move on to the next question because we are running out of time. And it is again a very important and a very popular question, rather, very interesting. How do we pronounce words like Brahma, Vanhi, Janhavi, Anhikam? So I don't know whether we have
Answer
time.
is how you are pronouncing it. It is correct.
Okay.
So see, but again, as you said very rightly, this is one of probably the most frequently asked questions in all classes. Okay. Um, and to answer is also, it goes at different things. See, one thing, there is a lot of debate which is going on here and in other circles about this question also. So what I will say is what I think is correct. Okay, I don't want to get into argument about what is correct, or there is a lot of niggling or this one you can do about it if we want to do it. But I will tell you at how I look at it from my angle. So first, very personally, I pronounce it as Brahma, Vanhihi, Anhikam. Why? Starting from, say, my mother, who taught me Gurur Brahma at a very young age, till the gurus who have taught me Mahabhashyam, which is one of the most advanced texts of Vyakarana. Everybody pronounce it that way. So the entire Guru Parampara, that is for me the greatest authority. Okay, so all of them without a fail have always pronounced it that way. Actually, till I started teaching in this forum and people started asking me these questions, I had just taken it as a fact of the language. Okay, and even now, the greatest pramana for such a pronunciation is the parampara or the tradition. And before we dismiss that as a blind faith or whatever, we should examine the why that tradition is held in such great respect. Even, I mean, normal brands, say Raymond, when they say Raymond, they put since 1925. What is that since 1925 conveying? It conveys that they have, okay, almost a century of experience and they have retained the best things through that tradition, and therefore they can give the best. That is the claim that they are making. So if companies which started like half a century, 1 century ago make these claims, what is our this tradition or the Vaidika Parampara? It's like since forever almost. So going by the traditional ones, it is an Apaurusheya Avichinna Guru Parampara, which has been going on forever. Even if you go by the most modern and non-traditional sources, a minimum of 5,000 years of tradition is what we are talking about. That's at the very minimum, without, I mean, even accepting all the dating you have, it's a minimum of 5,000 years of Shruti Parampara. As I said, for Ucharanam, the greatest pramanam we have is that Shruti Parampara. It has been passed on from Guru to Shishya in generations. And this Vedas, they are huge. So there are 4 Vedas, there are multiple shakhas. Across all these shakhas, across the whole of India, it is pronounced as Brahma. It is not pronounced as Brahma. Okay. So it's a huge thing. If we don't understand, if it was just somebody making a mistake somewhere, there definitely would have been variations across the whole country, across so many shakhas of Vaidika Ucharana. It is never pronounced in a different way. It is one of the facts of the language. Okay. See, in any pronunciation, say for the pronunciation of simple letters, in German, they call it man, that the A, they write it as M-A-N-N, but they pronounce it as man, whereas English pronounces it as man. So should I say it as a or a? It is not something that comes through the writing. It is what comes through the language, which is a spoken tradition. So similarly here, should I say Partho or should I say Partho? How do I know? There is no written record which says how you are pronouncing it. It is how the language is. The sounds of the language come through this Shruti Parampara, and the Vaidika tradition is unanimous in pronouncing it as Brahma. Vanhihi, Anikam, and they are not rare words. They are words like Brahma is the central concept of the Vedas, especially the Upanishads. And the Vanhi, Agni is again very common word. These are all very common words. And the Vaidika Panditas, they don't also, it is not that they have not thought. There are whole Shastras, the whole of Shikshastra, etc. is all built around the purpose of making sure that the Vedas, the Ucharana, the meaning, the Anushtana, everything is preserved. So in this tradition, when we have this coming through, it has to be taken as one of the facts of the language. Okay, that is my opinion. So that is why the pronunciation of it is Brahma. That is one aspect of it. There is, of course, I have seen views where they say there is one major argument which is made saying it is Sanskrit is a very scientific language. It goes against the principles, etc. But see, that's not actually true. If you study Vyakarana, what is Vyakarana? There are general rules and there are exceptions. Exception is the norm in the language. It is, Sanskrit is not a computer generated language where everything fits into a perfect pattern. There are exceptions everywhere, and it comes with a very rich variety. It is those different patterns which give the variety to the language, and you have to accept the exceptions along with the general ones. So to give a very few very common examples, say when you know the dhatus, say most of the dhatus, when we use it in latlakara bahuvachana, you see that anti. So pathanti, nrityanti, kupyanti, kurvanti, chorayanti, and so on. Okay. But there is a handful of dhatus. It's actually, you can count it. Okay, there are more than 2000 dhatus in Samskrita. All of them take that pattern of anti or ante, vandante, shobhante, etc. But there is like around 30 dhatus which they don't get the anti. You don't say dadanti. We don't say jahanti. We say dadati, jahati. Now it is obviously off the pattern. So can I say, okay, this is off the pattern, let me make it uniform or let me make it logical, and I say I make it dadanti? It is no longer Samskrita. You can do a lot of cases. An even more popular one is like, say, Pati Shabda. We have a Pati Shabda, which is mostly like Hari Shabda. There are millions of Ikaranta words, all of them pulling words, they behave like Hari Shabda, say Harehe. But Pati Shabda becomes Patyuhu. Why? There is no answer why. That is how the language is. The language uses it as Patyuhu. Why can't you say Patehe? Even when you do, actually, this is even more of an exception, because if you do a samasa, Bhupatehe, Narapatehe, all of them follow the pattern of Hari. Only the standalone Pati Shabda, it is different. Why? It is different. They do this also in biology. I mean, I was a student of biology before I took to Samskrita. Nature is different. It is a fact. You don't have to ask on why or how everywhere and get an answer. Variety is natural, both in the biological world, also in the linguistic world. Every language has its own structure. Sanskritam, correct, is more structured. The rules are much more systematic because the system was created around the language, but it does not mean that there are no exceptions. There are always exceptions to every rule. So one of the first rules that my Vyakarana teacher taught me was Sarve niyamaha sapavadaha. All rules have an exception. So she said, whatever you state about Vyakarana, you just add that prayaha. Mostly it is this. So till you learn to distinguish between where this is exactly true and where it is 90% or 95%, you can safely assume that there are exceptions. So this is one of the exceptional cases, exceptional ucharanam. But that does not mean we have to change it to something which seems more natural. This is another thing. I know I'm taking a lot of time. We are already past the time. But I would like to take a few more minutes because it's a very important point. When we see Panini, See, Panini is considered one of the greatest grammarians across all languages of the world. So he has created a very good system, which fits in all these words. But the thing is, he was so honest to the existing language that in not a single case does he try to say that, okay, this is off my system, this is not fitting into my system, so let me change the prayoga and make it fit into what is a logical system. Never ever. He creates sutras, new sutras, to derive a single word, which is very odd, which is irregular, but he still says, however irregular, however off the system, it is there in the language, means that I have to change my system to accommodate the existing prayoga. I cannot meddle with the prayoga and change it and force fit into my system. If you study Vyakarana, we see that at every step. Okay, so we don't have to change. This is a, as I said, there's a very, very, very strong parampara. If you look at the Jagat Gurus, if you look at the Vaidika Vidwans, they all pronounce it that way. And just that it doesn't fit into logic is not reason enough to change it. Then the third thing, of course, people ask, is there pramana in the Shastra specifically for this? As I said, Ucharana cannot be directly told in the Shastra, but yes, there are pramanas in the Shiksha Shastra. They identify that when hakaram panchamair yuktam antasthabhischa sanyutam aurasyam vijaniyat, it has to be, it has a special kind of an effort which is required to pronounce, that is recognized. And even Panini, he actually takes this pronunciation as granted. It is one of, like, say, the starting facts on which he builds the sandhi, and he gives sandhi rules which make sense only when we accept this ucharanam, and which don't make sense when we don't accept this ucharanam as Brahma. So that discussion is actually too advanced for this level, but we actually, in our Laghu Kaumudi class, we recently had a discussion. So if you have an introduction to Paninian grammar, you can go in our channel if you look for the Laghu Kaumudi course. So I think 6th lesson and 6th chapter and 8th lesson, we have discussed this. There are two sutras, Hem Apareva and Napare Naha, and also a Vartika, Yavala Pare, Yavala Veti Vaktavyam, all of which they give a sandhi similar to Parasavarana sandhi, assuming such a pronunciation of this one. So according to this view, the pronunciation is whenever hakara is followed by an anunasika letter. So which is na, na and ma. Other anunasikas are not found. So aparannaha, madhyannaha and brahma. So the pronunciation is the anunasika comes first. And also it is not just the reversal of order. There is something, you don't say it as brahma. The ha is not as fully pronounced. So it is a special, a very unique kind of pronunciation which can be learned through the Shruti Parampara. Brahma, the ha is there. The more focus is on the makara. Even when we do the dvitva, I showed there. So Brahma. So the makara gets doubled by achorahabhyam dve, and the hakara comes very subtly after it. So Brahma, annikam. The na is getting doubled and the hakara comes very subtly along with that nakara. So that is the pronunciation for the aparannaha, na, na and ma. Okay, in that there is no variation anywhere found in tradition. The other cases, the ya, va and la, say when you have words like prahladaha, ahvanam or hyaha. So there are two categories. One is ha followed by na, na and ma is one, which I've told it is always that way. The other three cases, when hakara is followed by ya, va, la, even in the Vaidika Parampara, there are two traditions. One is in the Maharashtra Parampara. So there, even for those ya, va, la, they are pronounced before the hakara. So they pronounce it as say Pralladaha, Avanam, Iha, etc. So where the Ya Vala come before, and this is also attested in the Vartikas itself. So the sutras don't mention it, but the Vartikakara does mention this particular aspect. So even this has a tradition of at least 2500 years. But again, there in our parampara, in our Guru parampara, we pronounce it as Prahladaha, Ahvanam, and Hyaha. So both are seen based on the Guru parampara. You can choose that the tradition. For Mana and Na, as I said, it is a single this one, and we go by it. So me, Brinda Bhagni, all our gurus have been teaching that way, and that is the final word. So if you ask me why, as I said, there is no answer, because in the language for all these whys, and why should it be this way and not that way, there is no answer. Okay.
Just can't thank you enough for this, Soumya Bhagini. That was one of the most convincing explanations we have ever come across, and a lot of them are also sending you thank you messages for that, and they are also very impressed with the analogies which you gave to this tradition and also to biology. So thank you very much. And with your permission, if I could just ask one more question, Bhagini, hopefully
it is fine with me, actually. If you want to extend, as long as you and the other participants are okay, we can.
Yes, so just maybe this one question about whether we have a l pronunciation in Sanskritam, and how should we pronounce? Should it be Mangalam or Mangalam? And related to that, the difference between pronouncing the swara l and this la.
Okay.
Dhanyavada.
So yeah, about the la, there is no la in Laukika Samskrita. See, Samskrita, we have two kinds. One is called a Vaidika usages and Laukika. So many of the rules are the same, but there are also many special rules for Vaidika. So in Vedic Samskrita, in specific context, the da is replaced by la. Okay, so la does not exist by itself in any word in Samskrita. La is not there. Only during pronunciation, say there is a word called ide. You must be very familiar. We say Ganadhisham Ishana Sunum Tam ide. There is a dhatu called ida, stutau, to praise somebody. So this ide in the Veda, that is not everywhere. So there are specific rules in the Vedas which are given by the Pratishakyas. So in specific context, the da is pronounced as the la, Agni Mile. So there, ile is not an independent word by itself. The meaning is given as the ide, Agnim ide, I praise Agni. That is the meaning. But da and la are both murdhanya. They are both cerebral letters. So there is just a pronunciation variation there in lakara. So other than that, there is no other word. There is no word in Samskrita which has la. It has only la. So Mangalam, it is always la. Regional languages have la. So Kannada, even Tamil, Telugu, all of them have that as Mangalam, especially that word. But in Samskrita, it is lakara only. There is no la anywhere. Again, if you ask why, I can just say that there is no usage. If we ask that way, we can go on asking why is there no za? Z sound is not there. Fa sound is not there in Sanskrit. The ra, which is there in Tamil, right? So the Tamil ra sound is not there in Sanskrit. There are so many sounds. Each language has a specific set of sounds associated with it. And in Samskrita, we don't see that lakara in any word. Nowhere, zero. So it is always, wherever you see it, it is only the lakara. Actually, in this very recently, somebody in my other class also asked this words like Lalita. Apparently in Malayalam, they are pronounced with two lakaras. One is la and the other is la. I didn't know that, but then no. In Samskrita, there is only one lakara, which is a dantya, la, where the teeth touches the, the tongue touches the teeth. So it is always la only. There is no la. So if we are chanting Samskrita stotras, it has to be la. So if it is, of course, regional language, songs and all, whatever is there for that language, you can use. But if you are using stotras, the Samskrita stotras, it is recommended to chant with the la only everywhere.
Dhanyavadaha Bhagini. Just related to that, how do we pronounce words like kliptam?
L. Yeah,
L.
so the L is a swara. Okay, this R and L, they are called Narasimha like letters. So they have a combination of a consonant part and a swara, a vowel part. So Rikara has an amsha, a portion of repha, and Likara has an amsha of lakara. So why do we call them as swaras is they can be elongated. When I say r and l, what I am elongating there, the part, that is actually the swara part. It doesn't exist as a separate swara called a. So is actually the swara part, but they don't exist by themselves. They exist along with repha, that is as r, and r, the Hrasva Dirgha Pluta. Again, L, and L we have as the case of Likara. We don't have Dirgha Likara in Samskrita again. So there is L, and in Vedic context, we also have the Pluta. But that elongation, ability to do a Hrasva Dirgha Pluta is a typical property of the Swaras only. It doesn't happen for consonant. And also the nasalization, I can say a, I can say a. There is a nasal akara. Similarly, here I can say l and l, where that can be nasalized. So they have a greater property of swaras than vyanjanas. So we don't say that it is a pure swara. It is a swara which is combined with that vyanjana. That is what leads to the confusion. But in klipta, it is not, say, kalpa. When you have a word like kalpa where it is only a vowel, that lakara is different from what you see in klipta. There is that extra sound which is there, which is very subtle, but it is there. So if you write it as klipta, you can't even pronounce if you write it as k, l, p, everything. If it is a consonant, all of them are very short. You cannot pronounce it. The l there, it has that swara part. So it's difficult. It is a subtle point you will get by practice, and it is not very frequently used also. So not to worry too much, but klipta, l has that swara part extra. Whereas if I say kal, there is only that l, and l, there is a difference, subtle difference, very subtle difference.
Dhanyavadaha Soumya Bhagini. So I see that many of them are asking for more sessions from you,
Sure.
and they're all very overwhelmed. And I think some of them have mentioned that you have inspired them to start learning Sanskritam. I think that is the objective of all our courses. So please study basic Sanskritam, and you can take all the courses which Soumya Bhagini has offered, which like I said, more than 20, and you will be able to go into each of these concepts in detail. So please take the first step and start learning the language if you haven't already done so. And I know there are more questions, but we are already 15 minutes past our time. And we are again very grateful to Soumya Bhagini for such an enlightening session and for inspiring all of us. And she's like an encyclopedia. She's the go-to person for us. If any small doubt, Vyakaranam, we go to her. And I must also say that any course in Vyoma, she's like the backbone and the foundation. So even for our Suprabhatam course, she has gone through each and every word and ensured that it is grammatically right, gone through multiple pathantaras and given us the most authentic version. So much of work is done before a course is offered. So again, very grateful to you, Soumya Bhagini. We can't really express our gratitude, and very happy that everyone has enjoyed this session so much. and this will surely help us appreciate the nuances of chanting better. So with this, maybe if you're okay with it, Soumya Bhagini, we could conclude.
Sure.
With
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I really enjoyed it, because many of these things, I mean, when you teaching only a text, you don't get a chance to discuss or think on some of these. So I had to do a lot of thinking myself to how to present and what exactly it is. So thanks a lot. Hopefully you will do many more such courses, and we can have many more such discussions.
Dhanyavadaha Bhagini. So we will, as usual, conclude with Shanti Mantraha.
Sure.
Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramayah, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Dhanyavadaha. So see you all tomorrow at the same time, 5:45 a.m. IST, and we will continue with Prapatti. Dhanyavadaha. Sarvebhyah namaskaraha.